Hello, everyone. Hello, LinkedIn friends. I am super pumped to kick off 2024 with my amazing guest, Therese. We will get to that in a moment. But thank you so much for joining. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. Thank you for accepting our invite. We are super pumped to kick off the new year. So today, we're going to be talking about burnout or breakthrough, mastering the art of sustainable high performance. And to be honest, there's no one better that I can think about to bring to this topic than my dear friend Therese. So just to get you a little caught up on what you're going to be learning about today, have you ever wondered if your best is truly enough? Does the thought of failure keep you awake at night? Are you alone in your thoughts and your fears? Therese is here to give us some amazing insights. She is going to talk to us about achieving peak performance, protecting your team's well-being in today's demanding business landscape, and how to foster high performance and high achieving culture. Therese, I can't wait to get into this conversation with you.
Hello. I'm really excited to be here.
A pleasure. So I'm going to give you a little blip about Therese, and she's going to personally introduce herself. So Therese is an award-winning founder, speaker, and business coach. She is a true expert whose insights are invaluable to everyone here listening on LinkedIn and honestly beyond and in the world. I have had the privilege of working with her and being professional friends with her for over a year now, and she has brought so much extraordinary things to my life. I can't even begin to tell you, but I'm super excited for you to be here. Please introduce yourself, and then we're going to get into our conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm excited for this conversation, and thank you for your wonderful friendship too. I started my journey when I was 17. I was 17 years old, and I got a question when I was sitting in this office with English furnitures in a penthouse environment. And I was sitting with the CEO, and she asked me for an engagement, do you want us to hire you or employ you? And I'm like, hire me, of course. So from the age of 17, I've been working with management consulting, with business growth, culture. But business culture or company culture wasn't the term 20 years ago when I started. So it was all about growth, leadership, peaking performance, getting people to really build thriving high growth companies. So that's what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years at this point. And today I have the opportunity of traveling the world, doing keynotes on the topic, working with incredible founders and CEOs one-on-one in our CEO and founder programs. And the biggest portion with Reimagines, where I'm a founder, is all about cultural transformation. How do we actually build high performance, thriving cultures and companies with great humans? So that's just a quick background.
Super excited. I always laugh because I always tout business strategy and executive vision and how all these teams can symbiotically work together to increase revenue. But Therese is on a personal and professional mission to transform the culture of how we do business. And so she always laughs because she thinks culture can eat strategy for breakfast, if I got that quote from you right. So I like to think about it one way, but what you can offer to companies and businesses is looking at it from a whole other dimension. And so we're going to get into that. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, so the quote you just said, unfortunately, that's not me quoted or coining that. However, we talk a lot about culture being the silver bullet. And if you get culture right, you can build an incredible company. And if you get it wrong, it's a liability. So if you think about culture impacting everything, how you lead, how you communicate, which customers you're working with, how you co-create with the market, how do you grow your revenue, how do you reach profitability year after year after year as our clients are, all of that is impacted by culture.
Yes, so true. And Therese has shared with me so much of her wisdom over the years. And I hope you all walk away with multiple nuggets from the conversation today. So We have a range of questions. We're just going to get into it. We're going to go deep, Therese, right away. So
All right.
saw the question on the screen. Achieving excellence.
Mm-hmm.
As a leader, how do you manage the drive for excellence with the need to maintain well-being and mental health in your team? I know this is something that you've helped me with, but I'd love to hear your take on some of these points, and I'm probably pepper in some thoughts that you've given me over the years.
All right, great. So when we talk about excellence, we need to put that in a context, right? So one way of defining excellence is top 5% in the world in your field. Another way of relating excellence is to create your internal excellence scale. This is one of the things we teach in our leadership programs. And if you think about where are we aiming for different goals, different tasks, different projects, different things we are pursuing, if you and I are aligned on knowing exactly what does success look like, what does excellence look like, we are going to have a much easier time collaborating, but also knowing where we are aiming, right? Because there's an opportunity cost of getting higher up on the scale. So the scale we are using is 1 to 5. And our 1 is great. So note that we don't have good on our scale. And number 5 is world class, right? But an example I like to give here is, let's say that you're building, you're writing an article. And writing an article on level 1 might take you 5 to 10 hours, depending on how much research and interviews and scope. But writing a world-class article, that might not be 5 hours, 10 hours. We might be talking 500 hours, right? So that's another thing. If you build this into your culture and your leadership and understanding, like, okay, sometimes you want to go for that world-class, the 5, or whatever you decide that your scale should be, right? It's very important that it's adjusted to your company and to your leadership. But most of the time, especially if 1 is great, 1 or 2 is perfectly fine, right? So that is one way of thinking about excellence and aligning with where are we aiming for, what does success look like in these situations. In regards to well-being, so in another program, which is about reimagining performance, we talk a lot about peaking performance. But in order to peak performance, we need to have a very high level of well-being. So if we disregard our own well-being, it's going to be very hard to get into deep flow. It's going to be very hard to show up and be energized when we really, really need it. But also, we are not going to allow ourselves to thrive in the long run. Some of the founders we start to work with, we take them from surviving to thriving. And some of them, it only takes 6 or 12 months. And others, we're talking about decades, right? Because of the pressure and their life situation and how the company is structured. But to give you some specifics here, so on peaking performance, if we understand our internal body clock, the circadian rhythm, and really honor that, so we can create a day in a flow of our own energy, both to increase our well-being and our performance. They sort of go hand in hand, right? As an example, a lark, a morning person, will have a peak in energy earlier in the day. And an owl, a night person, will have a peak in energy later in the day. There is peaks and valleys throughout the day, but it's important to be aware that there will be a flow. And you should, if you want to peak performance and have a high level of well-being, you shouldn't push through the valleys. So in the valleys, this is when it's good to go for a walk, or maybe do admin, or maybe eat, or stuff like that. And when you have your most productive hours, when everything just comes easily to you, you feel filled with energy and you're pumped, no, you should probably not cook dinner. That's the time to do the most important high impact tasks and projects where it requires a lot of thinking and magic, if you will. So that is one thing to think about. Like, how are you for yourself, but also in your leadership, elevate people to live in line with their circadian rhythm as much as possible. The second thing is connected to sense of achievement. And we talked a little bit about that with the excellence scale. But if we know what success look and feel like, and we're all aligned, well, it's going to be much easier to go to bed and have this deep sense of achievement. And sense of achievement builds momentum. And momentum builds momentum. So even days when let's say that you're not having the best day, if you're living with a daily sense of achievement, that will carry you through. So that's the second thing to look and optimize for. How are you setting yourself and your team up to achieve a daily sense of achievement? And there's much more to that, but that's just the highlight. The last thing I want to mention is pacing. Okay, so we all have different paces and in how we prefer to work and create things and be creative and produce. And if you understand that, especially from a leadership perspective, we can structure our sprints, we can structure our projects that is more in line with each individual's natural pace. We call it performance pacing. And this type of the easiest way to think about this is that you have the marathoner, sprinter, and procrastinator. The procrastinator, not great, right? And it's not going to be good for your well-being, for your performance, for anything really. So let's put that aside. But when it comes to marathoner or sprinter, this is a matter of honor. Yes, that's where we want to honor owls and larks, night and morning people. We also want to honor if they are marathoners or sprinters. And they're going to relate to intensity, deadlines, and how they produce things very differently. So if we can structure it in a way where they are optimized for each individual, and yes, you can have 2 sprinters and 5 marathoners on the same team, you just need to take that into consideration, right? That's how we can increase people's well-being, but also their performance.
Oh my God, so many things. I have notes. I don't know if I knew all of these things from all of our conversations. So a few things to call out. I love your internal excellence scale, 1 through 5. I will love to just point out that it's great to world class. Therese and her team are working with some of the most extraordinary people in the US and around the world. So I love that you just start at great, which is why I just enjoy speaking with you so much. I love that concept of lark versus owls. I think I'm a lark based on what your description is. I like
You
that.
are.
I like those morning hours from like 6 to like the morning break in the middle of the day. And then, like you said, the admin stuff for some calls in the afternoon. And I love this concept of pacing because I also believe running a business is a marathon. And I believe that there's probably technical and strategic sprints within it. But I just don't have time for the procrastinators. So I just love that. So fun. So fun. Okay. I'm going to skip around from our questions that we have, but based on what you said, talk to me about, and you've introduced me to some, and they've really helped me with my day and my business. Talk to me about some self-care strategies. I know you have a toolbox of a billion probably, but give us maybe 3 to 5 that you think everyone should know about.
Yeah. So if we talk about this from a business context and a leadership context, the first thing to recognize is that if you're surrounded by people that you feel that you need a whisk in a blanket to recover from the interaction every time, that's going to drain you, right? That's not going to help with self-care or avoiding burnout or anything like that. So we need to recognize that the people around us really impact how we are feeling, how we're operating, how we're able to step into our best selves and really honor our own path. And from a leadership perspective, we have a whole framework around that and several programs around that. How do you actually build a team with high achievers, people that are deeply committed to the vision and the values of the company and achieving goals as a team? So that's number one. I already teased one of the others, and this is connected to success. How do you define success? And how do you define what a success and done look like, feel like? Let's imagine that you are working on something that is deeply important to you. How will you feel when you have achieved this? And really allow yourself to be vivid with it. What do you see? What do you feel? Where will you be? What will this unlock for you and your team and the company? The other 2 things I want to mention here is connected to time. So we talk about different type of time, flow time, thinking time, serendipity time, if you will, and me time. Those are a few. There are many more, and it's important to create space in your calendar, especially with busy lifestyles, for thinking. And it might not be that you're sitting in your office or at the desk and you're doing deep thinking. This might be when you are in the gym or out for a walk or in conversation with somebody, depending on your style. But creating space for thinking, because a lot of times we have this opportunity of working with brilliant people, but they don't always make the time to tap into their own wisdom. So obviously you can do this in a conversation, in sessions with people like myself as well, but it's really important to create time where you're just able to tap into your own brilliance and take the wisdom you have and put it in context that makes a difference for you right now. Flow time we have touched upon, spending time for your most high impact activities and tasks and achieving them from a perspective of excellence, whatever you define excellence. The last tool I want to mention, I'm sure most of you are already familiar with this, but I'm a big fan of meditation and journaling. And preferably doing it in the beginning or end of the day, whatever that looks like for you. Does it need to be in the beginning or end? No, absolutely not. The key thing here is to, again, make space for it. And a meditation can be as short as a 2-minute or a 5-minute. So it's not something you add to your laundry list of tasks, because that doesn't really help. But the reason why I'm so excited about meditation and why I do that daily, it changes the brain for the better. It creates new brain paths, and in a way, it makes you smarter, which is kind of exciting. So again, this comes back to thriving and tapping into your own ability and your own path. So those are just some thoughts on the topic of self-care and excellence.
Love that. Love that. Already have so many notes. Two things I wrote down. The people around us impact our best self. We talk about this a lot, and I cannot stress the importance of that. I do love the concept of success versus done. I feel like we talk about, and I struggle with, you're like, what does it feel like? Visualize it, taste it, feel it, smell it, etc. That's definitely something I know a lot of people talk about. I feel like that's a hard thing and concept to grasp. So go talk with Therese. But I love the concept of success versus done. I think that's really important. And I know you are huge on meditation and journaling. And I know you have shared that with me. I know a lot of people that are high achievers do meditation specifically. And I know that's really important. All right, next one up. I'm going to go into positive decision making. So how can maintaining a positive outlook influence decision making and effective leadership? And I'll just add, I've been in really magical work environments and I've been in not magical work environments. Obviously, I started my own firm, Rev Up Advisory, to stay in this positive decision making and to transform the way we do business. And so would love to hear sort of your take on this.
Yep. So the first thing to recognize is, where's the decision coming from? So if you imagine circles, the inner circle is the individual, the second circle is the team, and the third circle is the company. If you make decisions from the individual, optimizing only for the individual, you're not really going to care about how it impacts the team, or a little less the company, right? And this is a form of toxic or negative behavior, and especially for people around you. So what's the alternative? Well, if you come from a frame that what's best for the company in the inner circle, and then what's best for the team, and then you last. Well, if you optimize for the company and your team, indirectly you will optimize for you, but it's not about you, right? And you take yourself out of the equation, which is sometimes helpful for people if it's become too personal. So if you want to come from decision making from a positive perspective, understanding what's the frame, like what are we optimizing for here? Not just from the model I just shared, but also going back to how do we define success? And we can optimize for a lot of different things. So why are we optimizing for growth over profitability? Why are we optimizing for going into new market versus doubling down on a market where we're already present and have a lot of dream customers engaging with us, right? What are we optimizing for here? Well, either of those choices, and typically it's not that simple, right? It's not just a crossroad with two options, but for this example, let's run with that. So I could argue that both are great, right? But it comes back to what's the purpose with the company, what's the value, how do we define success, what's the goal for the year, and how does your culture, strategy, and your achievement piece all work together? And depending on that, well, you will be able to make a more informed decision and understand what you're optimizing for. So making sure the key here is really to see how do we align our vision, our goals, and our culture with the optimization for what and why.
Yes, I like that. You've taught me the kind of inner circles, individual, team, and company, and constantly coming back to that framework. And I'm sure there's so much more to it. And looking through that lens, obviously, business decisions aren't so easy to make, and there's a lot of factors, probably more than two. But when you have kind of a sounding board and these frameworks, and you're dealing with high achievers that want to succeed, whatever that looks like to them. It's a really smart framework to look through. So we're going to go to our next question. Promoting a healthy work culture. I think it sort of ladders into what you were talking about. What are some effective ways to create a high performance culture that also prioritizes the well-being of the employees? I think this is so important. I just saw a post earlier today on LinkedIn that companies are rethinking more than ever employee benefits, recruitment efforts, what they think about how to attract talent in this era and in the future. And I think that's going to change from when I came into the workforce in the 2000s. So would love to kind of talk through on this topic.
Sure. So I'm going to throw another framework at you.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why we do that a lot is to make sure that we're all seeing the same picture as we're talking about really complicated questions. So the starting point with culture is to understand, where do you fall on an infinity scale? This is one of our own frameworks. So you can imagine toxic over here and brilliant over here. Mediocre in the middle, aspiring, thriving, brilliant. So depending on the starting point of your culture, there's going to be very different level of challenges here and where you can take it. But let's say that you are starting on about the 72. The first exercise to look at is, okay, what would it take it to 73? Don't jump to 100 right away. Some CEOs like to do that. But going back to world class, we can achieve world class. It's just going to take a minute or two, right? Or a year or two, depending on the level of challenges and opportunities that's there in the company. But what would it take to go from 72 to 73? And what would it take to jump 10 steps? And how will that impact your people's engagement, performance, well-being, contribution, and sense of belonging? With that framework in mind, I now want you to imagine trying to pull a rope. And out of 10 people in your company, only 3 people actually pulling it. Okay. 5, they're just holding the rope. Or pretending to pull, but they're just holding it. And then 2 are actually trying to saw it off. That breakdown of 3 actually contributing, 5 doing the minimum, if anything at all, and 2 trying to sabotage, that is based on data of global engagement numbers in the US. So this is a common problem for a lot of companies. And this is what I mentioned in the beginning, that culture can really help you skyrocket it and create a brilliant place, or it can be a huge liability. So most companies, when they start, they haven't identified what's what here, right? And it's very hard to create a high sense of well-being and performance if somebody's constantly trying to remove the rope or saw the rope. So yes, you can optimize for yourself and for your team, and we've talked about some of those things already. But fundamentally, we want to change the culture and really celebrate the high achievers, people who believe in what you believe in. They are excited to work together to achieve greatness, and are excited to contribute something bigger than themselves. Because high achievers attract high achievers, and it creates an environment where we all thrive. And we're able to be creative. We're able to achieve things that we might not even have imagined that it was possible. So understanding it fundamentally is score where you are, see what would it take just to move it a little bit or all the way up. And we can do these assessments, but more importantly, recognize that and look around. How many in your company is actually pulling the rope, holding the rope, or trying to saw off?
Huge, I feel like. And I feel like I hear you in my head saying, slow down. These things take time. Because I probably am one of those founders that are like, how do we get from 72 to 100? Forget about 73. And I feel like you've given me some tools to slow down and say, right, how do you move the needle 1 point? How do you move the needle 2 points, 5 points, 10 points? We got a comment here, Therese, just so you know, that the rope analogy and data is fascinating. So I'm not surprised people here are loving this commentary. And earlier, Rob wrote that basically he just loves what you have to say. So keep the comments coming. Thank you so much. All right, we are about 5 minutes on time. So I am going to go with one last question. The role of mentorship. I believe that mentorship is crucial to moving from 72 to 73 and up that kind of rope or ladder, whatever visual you got. I know power of mentorship from folks like you has transformed my business. And so I can't thank you enough. But for those that are maybe naysayers or don't believe, or for those that just can't sort of quantify what mentorship can do to really transform the business, what would you have to say about this? Because I know what you do transforms so much.
Right. So even if I'm encouraging to slow down and not to go from 72 to 100 or expecting that to happen over a month or two, is it possible? In theory, yes. Have we done it? Oh, yeah, once or twice. But it's not recommended. It depends on the complexity of the culture and the company. But when it comes to this, think about the opportunity cost. So the people we work with, they are lifelong learners, and they're dedicated to really create a place where they are learning new things. They're applying the wisdom and the knowledge on an ongoing basis. They're sharing it with others. But there are certain things that you might need to spend 10 years honing the craft and really understanding how all the different pieces fit together. So the opportunity cost of you just figuring it out by yourself without any guidance, is it possible? Absolutely. Is that right for some people? Absolutely. Is it right for everybody? No, because the opportunity cost is so high, both from a time perspective, but also from a financial perspective, because what are you leaving on the table by not addressing these problems? And which people are you pushing away by not having a thriving culture? Probably the most brilliant, inspiring people you can imagine, right? So one way of thinking about mentorship, I like to think about it from a broader perspective, that this might be a guide, a role model. You might have executive coaches or advisors. But fundamentally, it's a matter of creating a space where you can learn and reflect and tap into that thinking time, but also having a space where you can level up and challenge yourself to really see that high impact opportunities that are all around you. And sometimes it can be easy to get stuck in the day-to-day, even if we're living lives in line with our values and our goals and we're excited. Well, things happen, right? It's part of the human experience. So how do we stay on our path, and how do we make sure that we keep setting ourselves up for success and to achieve greatness for ourselves and our team on a daily basis? That can be hard to do without any guidance or any support. So one way of thinking about it is having one person is a great start, but I would invite you to think bigger. Imagine if you could have, let's say, 3 incredible humans supporting you in your tribe, in your own advisory board, and have expertise that you could only imagine of before bringing them into your inner circle, and what that would do for you.
Love that. I know that you always encourage me, in my words, not yours, to find your tribe. And I know we've talked about mentors, advisors, we've talked about investing in communities and reevaluating that over time. So not just finding 1, finding 3, or finding that tribe, and then seeing how that fits you in the high achieving learning challenges that you have now. But then maybe in a year from now, how does that change and evolve, and does that fit you? And I know you've challenged me on this one, and I have found my tribe. So tribe members, hey. But
Hello.
it's super important for them to be there for you, because even just having a conversation with someone that you're able to bounce ideas off of in a safe space where you don't feel like you're going to be judged, or you're sharing some proprietary information that is maybe sensitive to the business, but having that safe space really can help give you clarity as to where you're going to go and what you're going to do next.
And allow you to dream, and dream much bigger in your leadership, in your career, in your path, whatever that looks like.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we are a little over time, which usually happens, but I want to ask if people want to get in touch with you, if people want to follow you, where, give us some places we can find you.
Sure. Here on LinkedIn. It's a great place. If you reach out to me, please refer back to this interaction. I'm blessed to get a lot of requests, so it's always helpful to see where you come from. And if you're open to it, share what stood out for you during our conversation, or what really resonated with you. The other way is visiting reimagines.com to learn a little bit more about how do you create that high-achieving, thriving culture for yourself, but also for your company at large.
Amazing. And just because I personally love it, talk to us about kind of the music with the Serene founder that you're doing on YouTube, and I'll try to add it to the show notes.
Sure. So we look at supporting founders, CEOs, leaders from a holistic perspective, and there are different ways of doing that. So a side project that we created a while back is called the Serene Founder. You can find it on YouTube, and it's basically designed for the times we talked about. When you want to set yourself up for the deep flow or deep work sessions, if you need to reset and just create some space to think deeply or even relax. There are different themes. There's even meditations. We're going to post more of those. So it's really a home for people to use music and imagery to help elevate their well-being and to support their own thriving journey. One out of many ways we do that.
Love that. I have been using that as I've been going through 2024 planning, and I have dual screens, and I got that over on one screen, and I'm kind of working on the other screen, and it's been super inspiring, I think, for me to get into that flow state of doing kind of this visionary, high achieving work. And so it is on YouTube. It is free. I highly encourage people to check that out. Therese, thank you so much. LinkedIn folks, thank you for joining us. This is just a glimpse into the kinds of conversations that I get to experience on a weekly, daily, monthly basis with amazing individuals that are in my network. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next month in February.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.